Well, welcome everybody. My name is Adam Holt. I'm the CEO and founder of AssetMap. I am very pleased to announce that my own mother, Dina Holt, has joined us today for the next hour. Welcome, Mom Dina. What do I call you, Mom or Dina?
As long as you don't call me late for supper.
Okay, let's go to well, that would normally be a dad joke, but that's okay, Mom. You can use those jokes.
You can call me.
Being a single parent, having to be both parents, that makes perfect sense. No, that's great. Thanks for being here, Mom. And thanks for all of you that are here and participating either live or watching this in arrears. We're really excited to do this program. This is just to give you an idea of what we were thinking when we came together with this program. As part of our community series here at AssetMap, we've been really trying to find ways to connect with financial professional community and give us all outlets that we can start having different conversations, right? Conversations that are not just about the typical retirement planning or the tax analysis or insurance strategies, ones that really talk to the true empathetic self that our customers are dealing with. And as you know, we've done recently programs dealing with a whole range of topics, like what do you do with people who have special needs children? What do you do with those that have LGBTQ components of their family? They're dealing with different topics and conversations. And for us, those of us in financial professionals, we have to recognize and have an empathetic view to what our customers are going through so we can deliver the kind of advice that they need. And one of the ones that came up really again and again was the fact that there's really not a lot of resources for single parents, which is clearly a growing community. So we're gonna spend some time, and I thought who better than to have my own mom participate in this, because what an amazing example you have been as a parent. Single mom, I've got an interesting family situation myself. I know a lot of friends are dealing with this. And so I really want to thank you in advance for being part of this, Mom. Yes, that is a picture of the two of us. For those of you that are wondering, I'm the small person in that case, and my mom was the other party. So thanks so much for contributing to this and for contributing to all of us, our empathy. Really cool that you're here, Mom. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you even have a picture of me. That's a good picture.
It's a great picture of you. And for those of you that don't know, my mom, she's very modest about it, but she's quite a successful business entrepreneur herself, having gone through this and done this. So we're going to get the opportunity to hear some things about, how single parents are really attacking, setting up themselves financially. And of course, we're seeing a lot of people go entrepreneur these days because they need the flexibility, certainly given what's going on in the pandemic. So we're going to get some great insight here. Here's what our agenda looks like today. Dina and I found a couple of really different themes that we're finding in most of our single parent friends through different phases of their lives. And I want to give you some context as to what we're seeing from a research standpoint. And then we're going to ask Dina specifically, what are her experiences in those early days of single parenthood, in that sandwich era that I mentioned in our kind of pre-roll to this program. And then of course, the challenge that a lot of families have when they're catching up, especially single parents, when they're catching up after having committed so much of their time and their finances to their family, always putting themselves last. How do they catch up from a financial standpoint? And then we're going to touch on this topic that I mentioned, which is also how do you deal with the emotional components of advising your own family, not just always parents, but there's a lot of dynamic there that I think we can touch on. So we're going to spend about 10 minutes on each of those 4 topics. We're going to go to Q&A. So if you have questions throughout the program, it will be monitored by our team here at AssetMap. And if they can answer the question, they'll try to answer it. If not, they'll hold them for the end. So with that, we'll close with some resources. So that's our agenda for today. I hope you're paying attention and you're not doing emails and all kinds of other stuff, because there's going to be some fantastic stuff here. So Mom, I wanted to take a couple minutes here and literally inform. I had done some research. You'll be very proud. I went online. I did some research. I wasn't at the library, but I did some research about modern parents. And being from Philadelphia, the Pew Research Organization is very important. Us here at Philadelphia, you remember our neighbors actually. They've got fantastic stuff. So I wound up going on here, and I was really actually surprised to hear or to learn that a significant number of parents are unmarried, more than I thought. So it actually turns out, at least in the US, 1 in 4, and this is as of 2017, parents are unmarried at this point. Now, there's lots of reasons why this happens, right? Not just the divorce. There's obviously deaths. There's There are individuals that have children on their own, adopted or otherwise. But what's really important is that I want to impress upon everybody here the scale of how many people out there in our potentially advising community are actually dealing with being a single parent. And one of the things, when you look at it from the children, actually those children, I'm one of those children, living with a solo parent is actually pretty significant. And so with nearly a significant amount of those individuals being solo moms, 21% of the children that are basically living in the United States are living with a solo mom. That is really important. And so, of course, I wanted to understand more about this. And it turns out that the reason why this is not getting a lot of attention is because a significant number of these individuals are living under the poverty line. And so that, as a result, I think we're missing out on the financial literacy opportunity to help these individuals who clearly need guidance and help, but they're just not getting on financial professionals' radar because they're not calling you and saying, hey, I need some help. I can't figure out my life, try to invest my money. So they're not in that typical client that we would look for, I would say, in general. And what's also really interesting is how many of those single parents are living with their own parents. It turns out that it's as many as 23% of solo parents are living with their own parents, which means that they're also in a primary role for taking care of those parents, which is exactly a similar situation that you had, Dina, which we'll talk about specifically, right? So again, we're talking about a lot of situations here that are things that we can help with specifically. And when you look further at this and you break down this data, it is clearly showing that there is a racial divide in this challenge, right? A significant number of Black women are solo mothers, taking care of children, also cohabitating situations. And you can see why, clearly, depending upon what demographic you're working with or you tend to dominate in, there's a great underserved population here that we need to be aware of. Now, why is this so important that we all be aware of this? Clearly, it's a huge demographic population that needs advice and is not actively asking for it specifically, okay? And that means also that you and I, all of us on this call, we know somebody or we are somebody who has this specific situation of a dependency on a single wage earner in a household. Really, really prolific, right? And if it's not someone that you know, one of your clients likely has someone they really care about who's dealing with this situation and they're not getting help, which means we have a unique opportunity to offer that help in advance. I think that's important. It's pretty clear from my conversations with my mother, as well as many of the clients, as many as 60% of my own clients in my practice in the early stages were single women, not a surprise, tended to be more aware of this situation, I think, than most. But single parents tend to put themselves last. Mom, you told me stories about our childhood when grandma would feed all the kids and she'd eat the scraps on the plate. She would always give more. And I think you kind of mimic that. I know that I always give my kid the best bagel and take the scrappy bagel, but it goes further than beyond this. Yeah. Well, you were going to say something, so I don't know. Maybe there was an anecdote in there, Mom.
There's too many anecdotes for those times when the question came up, how much is enough? Do we have enough? And do we have enough to share? And will there be leftovers? And if there's no leftovers, what do we do tomorrow? So I would cut the portion so that you would get what you needed, but I'd cut my portion so that I have leftovers the next day. And then we do something else. So if that's an anecdote in there, that's what it made me think of when you said that. How much is enough on any given day? And where is the next day? How is the next day going to play out? So, anyway.
Yeah. So, but isn't this is what we see, right, from our peers and our friends? Single parents tend to put themselves last, and as a result, they're not getting financial guidance. They're not asking for it. They're trying to survive, and we're going to talk about that. But I think here's the point, and this is the kind of point that I think hopefully we're trying to make and share with our advisor community today, which is this is an opportunity to gain some empathy and offer help today, because I know one thing is that single parents, they don't forget who helped them, right? People who helped them, they remember when they finally arrive and look at the blessing that you've created for yourself, a very successful, you know, you're basically a model for single parents in many ways, because you have achieved success, and you're the ideal client for any financial advisor, given the kind of success that you've created that typically looks at the financial side. But it didn't start there, right? And so if someone was there to help you in the early days, that loyalty runs deep. So let's kind of talk about this. So here's what we're going to do with the time that we have. You and I had talked about kind of early phases, or phases rather, of single parenthood, where they were the most, we'll call them memorable, especially as it relates to finances. And I'd like to spend, you know, a couple minutes talking about your experience as an early parent and an early single parent, and kind of what was going through your mind. What were your, how do we get to know you as a potential customer that we can support, right? How do we get to know Dina? What was going through your mind in those times?
Well, I guess it has to play back to my prior successes and independence before I became a parent. To have achieved a measure of independence, I'm not talking about wealth, I'm talking about being a single woman with, I had everything I needed, a roof over my head, a car, I had some money in the bank, I had a good job, I made good money, I was saving some money. And of course, marriage back in the 70s was a whole different picture in terms of what you did and the view of the world of you when you were with somebody versus being single. And my view of that was always, it was a partnership, and that we were in it together, and it was a partnership. And of course, then you were born, and I had already had a couple of years of experience that it wasn't quite the partnership I thought it was going to be financially.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of achieving a measure of financial security, the two of us, I became very insecure while I was in a marital relationship, financially. And then of course you were born, and I worked part-time. I got a part-time job. Unfortunately, your dad's career was going downhill and I was trying to pick up the slack. So, but I didn't know enough about money management other than how much is enough to get through today. If I go to work, if I do part-time work a day here, a day there, that money was used to buy groceries or to put towards the rent that was due at the end of the month, or to put gas in the car if we wanted to take a ride, or take you out to buy ice cream, or if you needed new shoes. You're a monster. You were a monster from the minute you were born. So keeping you in shoes needed a financial planner all on its own.
Got it. Now it explains it all. Yeah.
And
I thought it was the extra food that you gave me off your plate that made me so big. That was it.
well, thank goodness you were a kid who happened to love vegetables and fruit. And if I offered you ice cream or fresh pineapple, you chose the pineapple. Go figure.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but that's the other side of that. The challenge was when you were around 4, I decided that the partnership was no longer a partnership that was going to serve me and us as a family going forward. We were already in debt and there was a lot of things going wrong. And I reverted back to thinking about, I could do this because I did it on my own before. I can do this. Now, I had no help, no support, and I shouldn't say help. I mean, there were people who would babysit for you every now and when I had to go somewhere, but I'm not talking about that. I had a little bank account, and I started putting money away for you. And there was even somebody at a money manager firm who had my little money market fund, but no one asked me what I needed or where was I at that stage of my life? What was going on that maybe I should consider this, or instead of doing that, I should maybe do this because it would be more fruitful. And when I decided to move on and be a single parent, I realized now I'm back in survival mode because I now have to figure out financially how to do this because I wasn't being supported financially the way I had thought would be. But I guess it's all on me. And I kept saying, I can do this. So what do I need to do and how do I do it? There was no internet. I couldn't look it up.
Yeah.
There was, my family, were not necessarily people who could give me advice about these things. So I had no real advice and nobody approached me, even though I knew a lot of people, and
Right.
any one of them possibly had a friend who did this or wanted to do this or would say, hey, let me have my friend reach out, but nobody did.
That's
And
interesting.
it would have been helpful. It would have been helpful to have had a little guidance. I did it on my own. We managed, we got through, but guidance would have been so valuable
Yeah.
instead of having to learn it day by day by day by myself. Is that sort of?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's endemic of what you see with people that are kind of dealing with a whole new set of variables that address, can I afford to stay in my house? Right? So,
Right.
I think the challenges that you're touching on, there's a couple things here. One is, I think individuals who are going through survival mentality are not thinking about talking to a financial advisor. I think that's generally true. Number one, they don't think they can afford them. It's intimidating.
Right.
I don't want to look like I'm less than. Now I've got my personal self-esteem to deal with, especially if it's someone I know. And so I think these kind of unfortunate emotional blockers stop the prospect from talking to an advisor. But that doesn't mean that the advisors shouldn't be actually outwardly creating content or outreach or specific offering of help to individuals to lift them up in that moment. That is what we're really hoping that is going to come out of some of this, is that we have financial professionals have these resources, but they're not necessarily distributing amongst the people that could need them. And there's a good business case for it, but there's also a good altruistic case for this, which is supporting our community, supporting our clients as family, and maybe even our own family members with guidance. So I think kind of sum it up for me though. What do you think? What would you have liked a financial? Well, what do you think? Because there's a trust situation here. You've mentioned this to me before.
Yes. Yes.
How do you know someone's got your interests in mind if they reach out to you? I mean,
I think part of that has a lot to do with the language people use to communicate with each other. Most people in professional positions, whether they're realtors or financial planners or bankers or whatever, they want to offer their service. And what someone perhaps in my position at that time, or many people in that position today, is they want you to offer them help and support. They want to know, what do you need, not what I have that I could give you, or what service I could provide. So it's less about selling who you are as, and I say this to you, Adam, as less about you're selling me the answers and giving me the answers as you see it versus asking me, hey, Mom, hey, Dina, what do you need? What support do you need? What is it that is giving you anxiety? What specifically is causing you to have this anxious reaction to everything that's going on? What can I do to help support you, rather than, oh, I'm a planner, listen, why don't we do this? You need to buy that policy, or you need to, rather than you're offering me services and product.
yeah,
What I want from you first and foremost, and what I think I wanted then, was someone to reach out a hand and say, what do you need? What can I do for you? Even if all I said was, I don't need anything, I'm good, but I'll call you if I do.
Mhm.
Have somebody say, maybe I could just look at what you're doing and give you some off the cuff advice about how you could do it better.
Yeah.
Not telling me, but telling me what they could do to maybe help make what I'm doing easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that
think,
would have,
yeah,
that I would have wanted from somebody.
absolutely. That's interesting. Well, we did take some time for everybody on this call to try to summarize, because when we had this conversation pre-roll, this literally was on for an hour. So there's so much here, and I thought, just for those of you with a camera or a screenshot, if you want to kind of capture some of the bigger topics that were really relevant for people in the early years. Number one, this is all about priorities. Very often budgets are driving the early stage. So how can we support people who are going through this situation by just literally empathetically offering them guidance and outlet, not necessarily recommendations and products and, hey, you can't afford me, but hey, let me give you a help. Let me throw you a helping hand. Typically their wounds are around the basics of financial planning, which is around, here's how you prioritize and here's how you budget, maybe budget worksheets we should give people. We should talk to them about emergency reserves and savings, right? We should talk to them about the seatbelts. Your family is going to likely need life insurance. Let's make sure we can get that out of the way so we're not creating an even bigger problem, right? So the early kind of planning components that young single parents need is these basics. It doesn't have to be so complicated, but can we provide content altruistically to this community that is going to build ultimate loyalty and support the community at the same time? I think we can, especially many of us with digital marketing strategies and content that we're providing out there. I think it's a great opportunity if you're in this space to serve this population. These are topics that people are going to have wounds, and they're going to be great outlets for them to do it. If you're using Asset Map and you're one of the people in our community, this is a great opportunity to just create a map for people, right? Here's what your life looks like. I've overlaid it with what your peers do. This is a great roadmap. You can basically follow it. Or maybe you need a checklist of just, here's the kind of classic fire drills that you're dealing with. These are the things you want to pay attention to, and let those parties receive that information, use it, even if they use it on their own in confidence, but then also have a way to reach out and talk to you about this. I think that's really the kind of, is be open to the idea that we can support people before they become ideal clients, because there's good business in it. And I think we can reach out to our existing clients and say, who's a single parent who needs support? I want to help them because we have a relationship together, and let's start doing that kind of thing. But offer our help, not necessarily offer our product, right? I think that's really important.
I think you're missing something, Adam.
Tell me, what am I missing?
Um, this whole issue of altruism or being empathetic is probably the single most important factor in any professional's life. When attempting to build a business, and building a business means having new clients and having a client base that is loyal, that are raving fans, that
Yeah.
stay with you because they trust you, because you did something for them, where there was this Wissam theory, what's in it for me, didn't exist in that moment. There's this empathetic reaction that says, I have so many resources and so much knowledge about so many things. What good is it if I don't share it and I don't use it? And I can't just use it for the people who are paying me, or for the people who are going to build my business by depositing money or buying a home or investing in something. But investing in myself as a human to be the best I could be means being a professional that's empathetic and saying, there's a portion of me that has to be better than just a person who sells or a person who markets. There's a part of you that has to be more empathetic. I've tried to do this in my business in the last 30 years.
Sure.
And I will say, knock on wood, I have clients that are still, most of my clients have been with me for 20, 30 years. And now I take care of their children and their moms and dads when they retire and when they move. And, so now they come to me for advice, even if it's not about business, but just because they want to talk about things, because they trust that I'm going to think about them. What do they need? Not what I could give them, but what do they need, and what resources can I tune them into that's going to help them get what they need? And so many people in the professions just don't do that. They're not the best they could be. There was a book I read gazillion years ago, I have to tell you.
Okay.
And it was called Breaking Rules by Kurt Wright. And the basic question that the book asks is, who are you when you're at your best? Who are you when you are the best you can be?
Hmm.
If you're not thinking about other people on this earth next to you who may need the resources that you have available and you don't have time, it's the part of contribution that makes you bigger for
Hmm.
yourself. I think financial planners and money managers, God bless every one of them for the work that they do so that you don't lose your money, so that you don't, wind up being retired with nothing to show for it. But thank goodness you're all there. The question is, what can you do? How can you reach out empathetically and to build trust so that something that I'd said to you earlier, Adam, about a motto in my business, do you want a mission today or do you want a client for life?
Mm-hmm.
And one way to start that is to care about what they want, what they need, and make sure that you can offer it knowing you may have nothing, you may get nothing in return. So that's,
Yeah.
I,
No, but this is great, and you're right. This is the model that you created for yourself that I followed in your own business and what worked for you, which is, you always lead with how can I help first. If I deliver enough value, you'll do the business with me anyway, and I just trust that. And if it doesn't work, oh well, c'est la vie. I mean, that is a luxury in some cases, but it is definitely a mindset. As many of us when we start our business, we're like, we'll take business from anybody. But I think that it is really true. Once you've created some level of expertise and some level of, I would say, capacity to recognize that people need help, it's a fantastic opportunity as a professional to do that. And I hope that people hear that message. And I know many of you on the call are doing that. You wouldn't probably have shown up today if you didn't care about that topic. Let's jump. That was fantastic. So let's jump to the next, we'll call, era that we're seeing a lot of single parents, which is this idea of the sandwich generation. So yes, no, I apologize in advance. This is a picture of us and grandma, grandpa just after they got sick. And so it's always fun to see funny pictures. It's amazing, Dina, to see you there. That's 1987, 88,
89,
89.
88,
Okay.
89,
Got it.
88.
See, I'm taller than you already. That's important to me.
Yeah, I think you
And
were 16.
17, gosh.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I don't think you were 17. I think you were 16 there, 15,
16.
16.
Anyway, well, now that we know what age I am, that's great. So
Yeah.
now we know both of our ages. So talk to us about this. What were you dealing with as a
Oh,
single parent? You just got established. I was now, you were 10 years a single parent. Now all of a sudden you've got two new dependents under your arm. Talk to us about what you were going through, and then we'll try to figure out where we could have helped you.
okay. Well, I think first off,
Yeah, it'll
and
help us understand the situation. Like
I don't say this lightly. I had come to Philadelphia. I was recruited out of a law firm in New York to run a major law firm in Philadelphia, and that's why we moved here.
yeah.
And things were going well. I had come up in the world after survival mode and was back earning a good living and had a terrific career, and we had a nice house, and my parents decided to move with us, which was a big surprise to me because I had set them up to take over our co-op in New York.
Yeah.
When they announced they wanted to come. Their belief was that I was going to need the support as a single parent because I was running a big company and I was traveling with my partner doing seminars around the country, so that I would need the support. And within probably 8 months of arriving in Philadelphia, my mom had a stroke, a spinal infarct, which kind of left her in a wheelchair. And then, meantime, I'm running a law firm. and had hired all kinds of people to take care of them at home, and because I bought them a little house near us so that we could be close and to take care of them. And so I was earning a good living, but so much of my income was going to pay for these people who were coming to the house to take care of them. And then 6 months later, my father had a heart attack. So now he's at home. Now it's the both of them. And day after day after day, I'd be in meetings and the phone would be ringing. Your dad's on the phone. Your dad needs you to come home. He just fired the nurse. She found her stealing, so he fired her, so bottom line,
right.
I became a captive, and I say this lovingly, I became a captive of circumstances.
Yeah.
And left the law firm. And so now I have, what do I do now? And I figured with what it's costing me to take care of them and the time factor of they didn't trust anybody but me to be there to fluff the pillow and make sure they got their meds or make sure they ate what they're supposed to eat or buy the kosher food that they're supposed to eat. And you were still in school. I quit and came home and said, now what do I do? What I learned in working in the law firms for the last 8 to 10 years before that, and especially the major ones, was I learned all about benefits and things that I never knew before. I learned about long-term disability. I learned about long-term care. I learned about life insurance. I learned about things that I knew nothing about before that when I left the firm, I no longer had. So now I had no benefits.
Yeah.
I didn't take the long-term disability policy with me because it was part of the company. I didn't have life insurance. I certainly didn't have long-term care. And thank goodness a friend of mine who was an insurance agent said to me, you have to get a disability policy because now with all these people dependent upon you, you need to get some stuff. So I did. So I bought myself a long-term disability policy. And so I had that. Unfortunately, after a couple of years, when I ran out of all the savings that I was using to live on, because this went on for 5 years until they ultimately passed. But after 2 or 3 years, and I'd use it all up, I canceled the policy because I couldn't afford it anymore. And now I went back to start all over again with a budget. Again, by that point, you had a fund for your college put away, which I wouldn't touch, or I didn't want to, I wouldn't touch. But mine was just going down, 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 down.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I had a money manager, I had a mutual fund, I had an IRA, and I would call up and say, what should I do about this? And what I was told was, let it ride, leave it alone, don't take it unless you absolutely have to. That was the end of the advice. That was the end of what else could we do? What's your situation? Maybe we could do something else. Maybe what you need is an annuity. Maybe because, we need something you can't touch in case you get into trouble. But none of that advice came out of anybody I was working with at the time. So I was a captive audience and decided that I need to take on odd jobs. So I signed on with a temp agency.
Yeah.
To be able to work, to make income, to have money, which I did. You were old enough to be left alone if I had to go to work. I didn't worry about a babysitter. That was bad. I know. What could I do? And I remember one in particular that I just have to bring to remind you of was the temp agency called me and asked me if I want to take on this project. They were doing an audit in this, and I said, sure. It's great. How much are they paying? Told me how much. I said, done. I'll take it. It was a 1-week job. They sent me the information. It was at Graterford Prison, which is a maximum security facility about 45 minutes away from where we lived. And I said, no problem. I'll take it. And I remember going there, and you can't wear anything, no hair clips, no watch, no jewelry, no pocketbook, no nothing. No cell phones in those days. And when I got there, I was strip searched, which was a very interesting experience. And all I could think of was, at the end of this week, I'm going to have enough for the next month. I said, have at it. And so I went there, I did the job for the day. It was actually very, very interesting. When I came home that night and I walked in the door, you were sitting with your head in the window, your nose pressed up against the window, and you grabbed me. You were so frightened that I had gone to this prison for the day, and that until the minute I walked in the door that I was okay. And it was, I'll never forget that, because you were practically in tears that you were worried about me. The next day, and I went back.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
walked in the door, everybody looked at me like I had 6 heads, and I thought, what did I do wrong? The head of the group there looked at me when I walked in. He said, no one ever comes back the second day. And I was there the whole week. I stayed there the whole week, and thank goodness, it was okay. Everything worked out okay. Nobody got hurt. There wasn't any lockdowns that week, or nobody killed each other that week, or, that I was aware of. And at the end of the week, the gentleman offered me a full-time job if I would come to work and travel all over the country doing audits for prisons. And I said, no, thank you. I took
That's where you draw the line.
I ran home and I drank the biggest glass of vodka that I've ever drank in my life at the end of that week, that I didn't have to go back. Anyway, that's my story. But
That was a fun story. I mean, not a fun story to live through, but that's a fun story to share. Well, but think about, yeah.
But those are the things that are challenging, the things you have to do. You don't ask, should I do this? It's, what do I have to do? And to me, it was, as a mom, and also being in the sandwich, I had to do whatever I had to do. Whatever it was, I did it. I did it. It didn't matter what it was, I would do it. And there, nobody offered.
Well, there's a couple things you said. I mean, sorry to interrupt you. There's a couple of things that you said that I think are really relevant for our audience, right? I mean, everybody probably took their own kind of insight and lesson, not the least of which is when you're a single parent, you do what you got to do to keep the lights on, and people are doing this at all different kinds of scales, right? I mean, your own experience, you go from running the firm to basically just doing the typing in the prison, showing that single parents have to make tough decisions sometimes. And with respect to finances, here you are, again, you're dealing with the same kinds of topics again, right? Again, we're talking about where's the cash, and now all of a sudden we're concerned about, do we have the right insurances, and should we have long-term care on mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, right? Like there's such a gap in terms of information that people are informed with. Not the least of which is when you have the situation, you lost your employee benefits, and there's, do you have the legal documents? Like, God forbid what happens to you. You're taking care of 3 people. Who's in charge, by the way? I wasn't even old enough to be my own guardian. So these are opportunities for us as professionals to start remembering, and that's what I hope you're hearing, everybody in the audience, right? These are real stories. Moms, I'm making this up, right? Lived through it, succeeded through it, right? You're not making this up, right? You're not reading this off of a magazine. No. I had to do that to you just to see.
It comes right out of a page of my autobiography.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll plug it if you're going to ever finish it. We'll plug it at the end of this program. But
I'm never going to write it.
Just too long, I think that's it. But these are some of the things that we picked up as really core topics that we need to be talking about for all households in the country here, and people that we're talking about. How do you fund college? How do you make tough choices and priorities? But what I thought was really interesting is that you said that you had a financial professional, and all they wanted to talk about was the mutual fund and just stick with it because that's how they got paid, which was basically the longer you stuck with them, the more money they collected. They didn't really have to deliver any advice except what their broker dealer told them to deliver and sell. And that's going away, everybody, right? That is not value. All right. We have to find a way to provide value. And if you were to be able to go to someone who's dealing with a sandwich generation and literally say, look, here's what your families look like. Here's what your parents' map looks like. Are these things in the right place to deal with a long-term care scenario where you're actually going to run their household? Do you actually know where everything is? We miss out the opportunity as advisors to deliver what the real pain point was, which is just, can I get a handle on this mess? I can't fix it for you, but can I help you get a handle on it so that you can go and be empowered and make more decisions, not in a vacuum, but in intentionality? And I really think that's the real key. One of the things that we actually delivered, kind of inspired by this, and you can probably, if you know me at this point, I lived through this from a perspective as the child of this. So it's basically inspired me about the whole long-term care planning and how do you manage a family and a household long-term. Beneficiary reports we just gave to everybody. You can go back and say, hey, here's the beneficiary for all these different accounts. Are these right? Is this the intention? Most of the time we find, Mom, that households that we deal with, they just haven't been asked the right questions, right? And if they're enabled to be asked the right questions, they can come up with answers of how to fix stuff.
Well, it just made me think of somebody who said something to me about, I had a universal life policy as an example,
Yeah.
which cost more than a term life. You know, it's supposed to save money, but it costs more. And
Yeah.
I had that, and so many years ago, it was a small thing, but somebody said to me, get rid of that and get a small term policy. It gives you the same result, but it stops the money that has to be paid to keep it up right now. You could always go back and get it later. Right now, you need the money that's going to the premium, but you still need the life policy. That was a pearl for me that came out of the blue that somebody said to me that, you know, so it helped me save whatever it was, $1,000, a couple $100, which was very meaningful. But that one little piece of advice in that moment made a big deal to me, because I still had a little life policy in case something happened. I had to do documents to cover you as a guardian, you know, and any monies that I had left over. And at the time I was trying to buy real estate as an option for a pension plan for me. I used real estate as my pension.
Yeah.
So every $100, every couple of $100, every $1,000 bill that I could save to use it for planning purposes, for strategic planning, because at that point I'm already your age and I need to be more strategic. I've already started over again 3 times.
Right. That's right.
And each time I reminded myself that I did it before, I could do it again. But how many people out there don't think they can do it and get lost in the emotion of, what do I do now? You know, you know me. Well, you know me, I'm a warrior spirit. I don't give up. I go down swinging.
I know.
You know that.
Yeah.
So, but that's not necessarily the norm. And I've dealt with so many people in my business over the last 30 years who I have just sat with in the conference room for hours, just going over their whole life as if I was their financial planner, because no one did it for me. So I wanted to do it, and no one was doing it for them. So I said, I can do this for you. And
well, let's talk about that. We need to get to that. I don't mean to cut you off, but we still have a bunch of content that we want to share. You know, I think that the next phase, really, that's a good segue, because one of the things that clearly we noticed is when you're starting over your 3rd time, you know, a lot of you know, you feel like you're kind of behind the 8 ball. You know, at that point in time, obviously I was out of home. Grandma and grandpa had passed on, right? You're kind of set up with, okay, now I got to figure out what my priorities are. How does a financial advisor now interact with you in this phase? And what are your needs? What are the things you want to do? What do you want to get out of an advisor relationship?
I will tell you that at that moment when you left and went off to college, which was the same year my father passed, my mom had passed the year before, and you were all gone in the same 6-month period of time.
Yeah.
And suddenly, talk about, I hate to use the word alone, but it was the first time I think in my life that I felt totally lost, with no support, no one to give me advice. What do I do now? And I'm broke. And now I'm broke. When you left for college, you remember, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and
yep.
You know,
Frank and beans, mac and cheese. It was good stuff.
mac and cheese and absolutely. That was
Spaghetti
staple.
with no sauce was great.
You know, but you know, I never missed a rowing thing on a Sunday for you when you were rowing in high school. even though I sat at sit open houses on Sunday, which I always thought was a waste of time. I still do. But I would make sure I left 3:45 because you raced last and I could get there in time to be there. So I needed to be a parent as well as a wage earner.
I know.
What struck me about this conversation is that there were a lot of parents watching their kids rowing. There were a number of them. They were lawyers, doctors, financial planners, money managers. I knew what they all did for a living, and I came rushing in and was friendly with it. Not a single one ever approached me as a single parent. And I knew doctors, lawyers, financial planners, some of them worked for Morgan Stanley, one worked for Raymond James, one worked for, I mean, wherever, you know, but I knew that they worked for. Nobody said a word to me. And I said, I'm racing here. You know, I couldn't not do my open house because that's what I do for a living, but there was no way I was missing my son's race.
Yeah. You also, are you commenting on the fact that people profiled you and therefore didn't offer their services or solicit you for advice or guidance or whatever financial nonsense they were selling in those days? Are you saying, is that the statement you're making? Is that people didn't think to actually want to work with you, even though that was clearly a big mistake looking backwards, right? Because you created an enormous amount of success again. So
I think there's two. I think there's two pieces here. One piece is that I think people, they let fear stop them from doing what they may otherwise want to do. You know, fear of what I'm gonna, you know, appear as though I'm pushing this person, or I'm going to, instead of being friendly, I'm going to appear as if I'm trying to sell something. So I'm not going to do it. So the other, you know, the other part of that was because of my persona, and you have said this to me, which is really interesting, I don't ask for help. And people don't necessarily approach me except to ask me for their help, for my help. They don't necessarily offer me help because they think I'm some kind of a monolith that doesn't need anything or anybody. It's the way I present, and it's my security blanket that says, you know, I'm solid. So I think there's two things. One is I may not necessarily be as approachable as the next guy. That doesn't mean that I'm not needy. And also other people's fear of maybe they're stepping over the line to interfere or to ask, and fearful it will harm the relationship rather than build the relationship.
Yeah. Oh, that was real. Thank you. That was great. I mean, that was true. We all can, I'm sure half of you are nodding your head. You know this, right?
Yeah.
That was great. That was a great breakthrough, Mom. I mean,
Hey,
it's a great share. I mean, frankly, I mean, that awareness and empathy of the self is really awesome. I think what we cataloged, and it's actually, that's a great segue into what I wanted to get into, because one of the things that we talked about in that whole point of basically in this catching up is, yes, from the financial planning standpoint, you got to find purpose again, and you're alone, and you're like, I lost my dependencies, and the kind of the defining moments of my career is all shattered, and then the people that depended on me, they don't need me anymore. Now it's almost like a reinvention, and the fact that nobody's offering you help and guidance and financial guidance specifically is interesting. How do you, you actually chose to work for yourself because you had started doing this freelance. Very common today, by the way, everybody. With the pandemic situation, a great number of people that are losing their jobs are starting consulting practices so they can still stay home and they could be present for their families as single parents or maybe not single parents. But as a result, they don't have benefits and they don't have, they're dealing with debt now. And all of a sudden there's these great topics that we can be coming to individuals and personas like Dina with. Have you thought about this? Have you considered this? Have you considered thinking about retirement planning for a single person versus a dependency on, oh, we have 2 Social Securities coming in? No, you don't. You don't have someone else's pension or their capacity to generate income if, God forbid, you fall down. There's a lot resting on single parents' shoulders and single people individually. And we all know this, right? And I
Right.
think there's a lot of opportunity for someone to come to you in those phases and saying, here's how you maximize Social Security. I know you didn't call me and ask me about it, but I just assumed that you probably want to know this. Can I provide an outlet for you to grow and experience that? And that creates enormous loyalty, I think. And if you look at the advisors and professionals, even yourself and myself, that have stuck with over the years, are people that gave us when we didn't ask, and they gave without expecting anything back. Right? Those are the loyal relationships that we tend to care about. And I wrote this list for us just to keep us on track and to talk about some of the really important things that I think many of us need to consider. Not the least of which is to make sure that we pay attention to how we're funding towards major goals. And actually, I happen to be a big fan, Mom, of actually just delivering asset maps to prospects and clients and saying, hey, I took the liberty of creating your life on one page. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Happy to walk you through it. I see some things that probably need attention or areas I can help. All good either way. I just want to let you know that that resource is available to you. Have an awesome day. Let me know how I can help. Goodbye. And literally expect nothing back. I think that as the financial advisor community is shaping up, is growing to its true persona of being an advisory advocate, right? We're really moving towards that. Everybody is starting to lead with advice, which is great, as opposed to leading with product solution, or at least should be, or is hopefully moving that way. I think it's an opportunity for us to continually deliver value without being asked. And some of these things are really important. I do need to move on. Go ahead.
I know you do, but the very, very important piece of this is so much of this is personal.
Yeah.
It's not just professional, that people do not do things out of fear, and as I believe, fear is nothing but false evidence that appears real. A fear of loss, or of, somebody who coulda, woulda, shoulda, and didn't.
Yeah.
The fear of approaching friends, family members. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I
No,
mean,
we're there, Mom.
you
Yeah.
know,
I want to talk about this.
It is so important to get over yourself and get over your own sense of fear and have a little more courage to understand that you may say to somebody, a relative or a friend that you're very close to, you don't want to be intrusive, but yet that person maybe could use a little advice, that maybe you have the resources to offer, but they're not going to ask you because of the friendship. And the reason you don't step over that line is a fear of loss, losing the friendship, losing the connection, losing the love or the trust, instead of believing that I'm going to overcome my fear because what I need to offer and what I need to do is more important and more valuable than dealing with my own fear.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And in terms of what actionable, what can you, those in our audience that are participating today, one of the things that we noticed when we were putting together this program is that, one of the biggest dichotomies is the fact that my mom and I are very close, right? Single parent with a single son, you build certain level, connectivity, right? You're very dependent in some cases on each other. And going into professional relationship, we recognized there were times when things got awkward, right? I had my own fears about disappointing you, especially as it related to investment management or costs. We know that you had certain awarenesses and fears of like, I don't know if I want to bring that up. He's coming over for a visit, and next thing I know, we're going to talk about business. It's going to get interesting and awkward. I know a lot of my peers tend to avoid family members altogether because they don't know how to set the boundaries, and they don't want to go to Thanksgiving and everything's going to get weird. So they don't actually, and here's the missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the missed opportunity. A lot of individuals, as you've already expressed, those that need help and have somebody in their world, a financial advisor who can actually help them, and those advisors who have family members who probably would appreciate the help, but they're awkward, it's going to be weird, and they don't do it. What happens is that people don't get served. And I think that ultimately, if you make this personal, if you make financial advice personal, to take it personally, then it's going to backfire. And I know many times that you said that you wanted me to treat you like a client. and you said, treat me like a client, don't treat me like your mom, which is easier said than done sometimes, especially when we tend to have, sensitive ears about, oh, you said it this way, I didn't like it, and so the key is in this situation is to lead with the why. Me as an advisor, if I do know more things about finances, let's say, than my family member, I need to have the guts to deliver advice to them because I care about the outcome, not because I care about doing business.
Yes.
Right? I
Yeah.
think that's the key. What do you think? What do you think about that?
It's purpose. It's the struggle is deciding what's your purpose. And if you're not clear on the purpose that you're serving, what would be the purpose of talking to a family member? What would be the purpose of, if you're not clear and are unwilling to face the struggle of getting over the fear or the feeling intrusive or all those emotional fences that you almost have to break down in order to communicate. And you can't do it by barreling through the fence and breaking it down. You have to climb it gently. You have to be, someone that person is going to trust and believe you that you care. If they don't believe that you care, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
If they don't feel the emotional empathy, it ain't happening. If they don't, trust that what you're saying is really because you're trying to show them that your benefit is really important to them personally, even if there's nothing in it for them, if they don't believe it, it ain't happening. So much of doing this is, the offer has to be sincere, has to be empathetic, happens to come with a level of trust. If you don't have that, it's not happening.
That's true.
So, and the fear usually stops you from having all of that.
It's true. It's true. Well, hopefully in this program, as we wrap it up, I think there's a lot of great takeaways in this, right? And to summarize, we threw some things on the screen that hopefully you can relate to or find one or two things from this program together that we put together for you that you can actually, that'll shift perhaps your focus at a moment in time when you're delivering advice, not only to your family members or helping people make that decision to get advice or just give advice because it's the right thing to do. I say it's going to come full circle either way, because as the financial planner in the family, you're going to get called in the end or in the beginning. The question is whether because people will look for resources when they're stressed. But I think with respect to single moms, I think it's an interesting opportunity. And interesting because it touches every single one of us. People that are taking care of others need help. And we have a unique opportunity to offer that help and guidance in a non-judgmental way, in a way that actually serves the greater good. And I have to tell you, from belief and experience, it comes back to you tenfold. The question is, who's going to lead? And so I think that one of the things we can do as financial professionals in this age of people needing support and help is we can reach out a hand. And I think that Mom, you've done an amazing job of turning your life how many different times, supporting so many people. So I want to thank you for being part of this today and being willing to be open and authentic and vulnerable, we'll say. What's that?
A little bit. What comes to mind is the word easy. If we thought life was easy, everybody would do it. If things are not easy, they're not always easy, but you have to do it anyway. Approaching someone who needs your help may not be easy, but you have to do it anyway.
That's true.
And if you're mad at me and I want to love you, I have to love you anyway. If I disagree with you, I will love you anyway. And so I think there's a real message in here about it's not easy. It's not easy for the single mom. It's not easy for the professional who has something to offer. It's not easy, but you must find a way. You must find a way to do it. It's valuable, it's important, it'll be appreciated, and you will be the winner.
Yeah.
You will be the winner.
That's great. Thank you. Gosh, I don't need to say anything. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate your time. For those of you that have been joining us and stayed with us this whole time, we really appreciate your time. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank everybody who was part of this program. Mom, thank you so much. My team at Asset Map, you work so hard to get these things done. So we really appreciate that. For those of you that are following us, we do have programs coming up, in the near future, not the least of which will be a really fun. I'll be speaking with Aaron Klein and Brian McLaughlin and Alex of Advisor Websites. We're doing a CEO panel next week, so hopefully you participate in that. And LJ will be training also on our layouts and building deliverables that are really engaging with people on the 17th. So for those of you that are kind of still engaged and really participating, are now over 100 programs we've done this year, digital programs. I was just reminded by our team that unbelievable. Please stay part of our community and continue to learn and grow, and also find ways that we can be part of yours as well. So with that, I want to thank you all and say thank you to my beautiful mother for being on this program. And thanks for all you've done to help us get to a place where we can actually deliver value to now millions of people. Pretty cool. You touched that. You made that happen. So thank you, Mom. And with everybody, have a fantastic, happy holiday, happy Hanukkah for all those that are celebrating. And of course, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Kwanzaa to everybody.